everybody, it's Alyssa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a video talking about the worst books that I have read this year slash DNF. I did my last video on the best books that I have read this year, and a lot of you guys requested for me to do the opposite, where I talk about the books that I either DNF'd or didn't like. There's not a lot of books that I've totally hated, so I'm doing 2 stars down to DNFing, and it's a couple books, so I'm just going to talk about them and show you what they are. And one is being, actually 2 of them being a pretty popular book that has been pretty hyped up this year. The first one that I actually DNF'd is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I love the Twilight movies, and I loved this book when I was younger, when the movies first came out, but I just really could not get through it now as an adult, and I just think it's because of how annoying Bella is and how fast her and Edward fell in love. It was just annoying. I got to 75% of the book. I probably had maybe 50 pages left, and I just got so bored with it that I felt like I was wasting my time, so I DNF'd it. Many of you guys already know what Twilight is about. It's about this girl named Bella who moves to her dad's hometown, which is really small, and it rains all the time and everything's really gloomy, and that is where all of the vampires live, where the Cullens do. And she falls in love with a vampire, and then there's a love triangle with a werewolf, but in the books the werewolf is 14 and she's supposed to be 17, 18, so it's kind of weird. That's another thing that kind of threw me off of wanting to read it, is that Jacob was 14, but for some reason there was a love triangle with him. Just didn't feel it, so I DNF'd it. Personally, I rate a book, if I read 75% of the book, I rate it. I don't just put it in a DNF shelf. So I did read over 75% of this book, so I rated it 2 stars, I think, and I rated it 2 stars because I just feel like at that time I just wasn't in the mood to read it, and I feel like I could go back in the future when I'm in the mood to read it and maybe like it. Since I DNF'd it, I guess I should have rated it 1 star, but whatever. Next, I have the Gilded Wool by Roshani Chosky. This is a very, very popular book that everyone has been raving about this year. I DNF'd this towards the beginning of the year, I believe. I don't know the exact month that I read it because I didn't write it down in my bullet journal, but I got to maybe page 100, and my rule is if I'm at page 100 and I'm just not liking it at all, I put it down. This is a book about a heist, and I read this right after I read 6 of Crows. And 6 of Crows is an amazing heist story, and I absolutely loved it. So when I started to read this, I just wasn't getting the same love and vibes from it as I was with 6 of Crows, and I just couldn't read it. It's based in the 1800s, which I thought I would really love. I just wasn't a big fan of the characters. I thought they were all kind of boring. I didn't like the love stories going on, and the heist was just boring to me, so that's why I put it down. I know a lot of people love it, and I'm actually selling this right now to try to get rid of it because it is signed by the author. I got it in an Owl Crate box, so I'm trying to sell it for a little bit just because I feel bad just giving it away. I don't know. But it's really pretty. I just didn't really like the story at all. Next is another book that many booktubers love. This is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. I just recently finished reading this. I gave it 2 stars, which is not horrible. I still appreciated some aspects of the story, but I just didn't really love it. It's based in Seoul, Korea. It is about a main character named, it's about Gu Mi-young. She's a 9-tailed fox who consumes the energy of men, and since she's part human, she feels guilty when she kills men, so she decides that she is going to kill criminals. And one day in the forest, she comes across this guy named Ji-hoon, and they have a romance going on, and I just did not like the romance. I didn't feel like there was much of a connection with them at all. It did feel very much like a K-drama. I thought this book was going to be based more of an adventure story in the forest, but it was actually just more like a story of her in high school with real humans, and it was the typical side characters that were extremely excited all the time, and it was just a K-drama, but I was just expecting more. There was a couple fight scenes that were kind of, bloody and stuff like that, but I just wasn't feeling it very much. And I listened to this on audiobook. The audiobook was really good. The narrator was very interesting, but the story itself I just didn't really love. But I do love the cover of the book. I think it's beautiful. and I don't know, I just didn't really like any of the characters and I didn't feel a connection, so that's why I gave it 2 stars. But I know a lot of people really love it. Next is Predestined by Abby Glines that I gave 1 star. This was the sequel to Existence by Abby Glines. So this is the first book. I gave this book I think 3 or 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it, so I went ahead and bought the second one because I thought I would like it just as much, but the story just started to suck. It's about this girl named Pagan who can see souls, and she meets death and she falls in love with death, and it's just a story about that. And this second book follows whatever happens in the first book, and her ex-boyfriend goes missing, and her ex-boyfriend doesn't end up being human at all, and there's like this whole plot twist and stuff like that, but it's not like interesting. It's like super boring, and it's just like 2 really boring guys trying to fight over this main girl character who's just really boring and lame. It wasn't good. I don't know how I got through it all the way, but it was, I remember the ending being super good where I wanted to pick up the third one, but I was like, I'm not gonna torture myself through it again. So the next one is the first part to the Vampire Diaries. This is The Awakening and the Struggle. I think I rated this 2 stars. I love the Vampire Diaries. Like, you can ask anyone that knows me. I am absolutely obsessed with it. I've watched the show like 3 or 4 times. I love it. But the books suck ass. They are absolutely horrible. Stefan and Elena literally fall in love after seeing each other like once. She doesn't even care that she finds out he's a vampire. She just instantly loves him, even though he murders people. Not really, but you know. And they actually get engaged, if you even care about the spoiler at all, but they get engaged in this first book after knowing each other for like a week. It's just stupid. And I was hoping there'd be more of like a storyline, kind of like the TV show was, but the TV show is definitely a lot better than the book. Damon is about the same in the books, but if you remember, if you've ever watched the Vampire Diaries, in the first season, Damon's like very much like an asshole, and he is in the books as well. There's a lot of the same main characters as the TV show. They just look different. Like Caroline, I believe, is supposed to have like bright red hair, and in the TV show she has blonde hair and she's super popular. And then Elena is supposed to have blue eyes and blonde hair, and in the TV show she has brown eyes and brown hair. So a lot of things are different from the books to the TV shows, and I just didn't really enjoy the books, but I do have all of them just because I do love the TV show so much. And I'm going to still pick up the next one because I've heard that they do get better, but this one, it was just too fast. The story wasn't very good, and the characters weren't very lovable. Elena is just as annoying in the books as she is in the TV show. Then I have the Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick graphic novel. Now, if you know me, you know Hush Hush is one of my all-time favorite books, but the graphic novel sucks. It's not even really by Becca Fitzpatrick. I forgot who's the like illustrator. It's adapted by Derek Ruiz. The artwork is really pretty, but it's not what the characters are supposed to look like at all. And the arter? What the fuck? The artist just kind of seemed like he just wanted to give all the girls no clothes and some big boobs, and that's all he gave to the characters. Nora, in like every single scene in the graphic novel, her boobs are hanging out. They're in high school and she's wearing like a crop top, and you can see like her whole stomach and boobs. Like, that's not realistic here. It doesn't really follow the story very well. I like how the illustrator drew Patch. I think he looks super cute, but it's like the illustrator of the graphic novel didn't even actually read the book, and they just put a bunch of random stuff together. I'm only keeping this book because I love Hush Hush so much, but it's really bad. The next one I don't even have physically to show you because I got rid of it because it was so bad. It's Who Runs the World by Virginia Bergen, I believe was her last name. I'll put a picture of it so you guys can see what it looks like. It's, from what I even remember, it was so, like, such a forgettable book that it was really that bad. I DNF'd it. Like, actually, I read 50% into it, and then I got so bored that I flipped to the last chapter and read the last chapter, and it still sucked. It is about this world where men don't exist. They like died off in this like disease, and women are the only things on the earth. And this young girl, she runs across this male on the side of the road who's dying, and she takes him to her area where they live. I forgot what they call them. And she basically like nurses him back to health, and they try to keep him a secret from like the government, and because he'll be killed or something. But there's like this whole area where men are, and there's the whole area where women are and they don't interact with each other. They're basically like aliens to each other, and it sounded like such a good story to me, but the writing was bad. Like the grammar and the sentence structure was awful, and the main character was obviously a child, so they were super annoying. Just the interactions sucked. I mean, there was some interactions that I liked, like with the girl and the boy, but other than that, like, it was a very forgettable book and it wasn't very good, so I DNF'd it after I read the last chapter, which wasn't anything that was like, ooh, I love this book, so it just sucked. And then the last one that I rated 2 stars was Inescapable, which I forgot the author's name, but I'll put it on the screen so you guys can see it. I rated it 2 stars. I don't even really remember what it is about. It's rated 4 stars on Goodreads. I'm not really sure why. Like a typical paranormal romance book, but it wasn't executed very well to me. It's about this girl named Evie who starts college, and she sees this sophomore from across the room who she has this magnetic pull to, and he ends up being like this supernatural creature, and she finds out that she's not human at all. And it's just like a typical paranormal romance story, but it's not good. The interactions between them were annoying. He was super rude to her. It was kind of trying to be like a enemies to lovers type romance, which I typically love. If you give me like enemies to lovers romance, I am there for it, but it just wasn't very good. He was rude, and she still loved him even though he was like incredibly rude to her, like 100%, and she was annoying. It just wasn't good to me. I read it back in middle school, and I rated it 5 stars back in middle school because I loved how mean he was to her, because that's the stories that I loved. But now it just annoys me, so I rated it 2 stars because there was some things that I appreciated, but just still didn't like it very much. So far this year, those were the books that I DNF'd or rated 2 stars and below so far this year. I will probably be doing another one at the end of the year if there's any more that I DNF'd or did not like. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down below what books you have DNF'd this year. I'd like to see what kind of books you guys don't like as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.